Today on Locked On Rockies, the Rockies have made new hires, and now it's time to see what the process will be like as we go through spring training. Maybe it sounds like a little bit of a mix of the old and the new, which could be a fascinating mix for the Rockies. I'll explain why. Plus, you got to stay patient, Rockies fans.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 17th day of December in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. If you like the show, then take that support to the next level with the Everydayer Club, where you can join and go ad-free. You can get Locked On Rockies with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonrockies.supercast.com for more information. Today, we get some insight into Alon Leishman's plans or possible plans for the Colorado Rockies, and we'll kind of talk about how it's a blend of new and old. Plus, unfortunately, you got to be patient, Rockies fans. You got to hang on still. It's a term that you don't want to hear anymore, right? But we talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show, but we have to kind of explore this here, as everything is just still so much up in the air about the Colorado Rockies that we're just going to have to wait and see, unfortunately, here. Before we go any further, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So over on MLB.com, Thomas Harding's newsletter here pulled some quotes from Alon Leishman's appearance on the Shalom Sluggers podcast, I think, or at least from the Shalom Sluggers LLC on Instagram here. And Harding pulled some quotes here and some things that I thought were pretty interesting here, talking about his spending some time in the Dominican Summer League, learning some Spanish so you can connect with the players and get that personal level. What about this concept of being big into learning that Seattle taught him? And I like this quote: "We don't know what we don't know." And I kind of want to start here. I think that's a question, and I think that's that's an open-mindedness that the Rockies haven't seemed to have. The Rockies have at least what it's felt like, what we're told. The Rockies have had an identity. Ground ball pitchers, get that weak contact. They're going to go with that, and that's how we're going to be successful. We might not be missing the bats all the time, but when batters make contact, it's going to be weak, and it's going to go right to our defense, and our defense is going to be good enough to back us up. Now, the Rockies have not backed that up on the field, and they have not actually followed and believed in that philosophy. But I think one of the reasons why the Rockies have gotten in the situation that they have been, and something that I've talked a lot about, bringing in these new perspectives, bringing in these new ideas, bringing in these new voices, is the Rockies refused to change from what they were. The Rockies refused to adapt. The Rockies refused to learn. And I think when you're hearing this line here of, "We don't know what we don't know," that it's very obvious, right? But that is the approach that the Rockies need to have to baseball. We don't know what the actual secret to success to pitching at altitude is. So let's try more things. Instead of being so gung-ho and thinking that we've got it figured out, or we got to keep doing what we've been doing in the past, or we just have to stick to our status quo. We have to stick to what we've, technically our identity. You failed to innovate, and the Rockies' lack of innovation and the Rockies' lack of creativity is a huge reason why they're in the position that they're in right now. Why they're so far behind is because they refuse to innovate, and instead of being open-minded and listening and seeking out the opportunities to learn, They shrunk instead. They went insular. They put up barriers and walls. They said, no, we don't want to hear the noise from the outside. We don't want to hear the perspectives from the outside. We don't want to hear how you're doing it. This is the Rockies way. This is how we do it. And this is how we're going to do it. That belief and that stubbornness is flawed. And that is a huge reason why the Rockies are in the position they're in. Look at how many people they have brought in from outside of the organization during this hiring cycle. Look at how much turnover the Rockies have seen here. This is massive change heading to the Rockies organization because they were not willing to learn. They were not willing to grow. They were not willing to change. And it took 3 miserable seasons and close to a decade of losing baseball for them to get to this point. And it's still, and the jury's still out, right? We still have to talk about being patient. We still have to talk about all of this panning out and holding on hope that it does pan out. But that line just kind of stuck with me. The open mind. Let me just read the full thing here. This was the question he was asked. Leishman was asked, what did Leishman do as the Mariners coordinator of organizational learning under president of baseball operations, Jerry DiPoto, and then player development director and current Guardians field coordinator, Andy McKay, both of whom have a history with the Rockies, by the way. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things, especially outside of baseball, like from the movement standpoint and just how other sports even are taking care of their athletes. Leishman said that trickled down to how other teams do different things. It sparked a curiosity, and Seattle was big into learning. We don't know what we don't know. The curiosity. I mean, just think about that. We're talking about a Rockies team that's not only behind in analytics, but it certainly seems behind in that player. These things that can help the player take that player care, that player relationship, and all those things to the next level. Really look into these creative, interesting revenue or outlets and avenues in order to get the most out of your ball players. The Rockies' narrow-minded thinking and boxing themselves into just their guys, just their thoughts, just their yes men has squashed any hope of that innovation. Now is the time to learn. Now is the time to grow. Now is the time to be open-minded, and I think that's hopefully what we're seeing here through this new Rockies philosophy. It's way too early to say for sure, but if Leishman implements all some of these things that he did, and we're going to get to those in just a second, that is different. These voices, these names, these people, they should be coming in and approaching the game and looking at the Rockies differently than how the Rockies viewed themselves. That's why it's been so important to continue and bring in so many people from outside of the organization, because it is time to learn. It is time to grow. It is time to own up and accept the fact that what you're doing as a baseball team and what you're doing as an organization is not working. No matter how many times, no matter how many times people that have been in the organization for 20 years are telling you it's the right move, it's the right thing, it's how we've always done it, it's what we do as the Rockies. No. That is over. It is time to bring in these new perspectives and fresh change and be open to that learning. I know maybe I'm diving and maybe I'm splitting hairs or looking too into this, but we've had analytics departments doing laundry. We've had smaller staff sizes than ever before. The Rockies just got their big spring fancy, data-driven, analysis-driven spring training center and all that stuff up and running and operational. All while being years behind the status quo of other teams. That's some of the stuff. When I don't know why that one stuck with me so much, but I think it just says, wow, the Mariners had a guy whose whole position was dedicated to learning, right? That was his title, coordinator of organizational learning, and maybe the Rockies have one of these. I'm not sure. But it doesn't seem to me that the Rockies were really open to bringing in those creative, new, fresh ideas to help the Rockies. They stayed the course, and the course led them to where they're at now. One of the big things, and one of the things that will be interesting to see here about Leishman and his pitch calling, is that he took over doing it himself from the dugout, and that actually caught the eye of Warren Schaefer. Let's talk about that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And hey, maybe if you're not feeling about just, you're like, it's the middle of the week. The Broncos don't play until Sunday. What am I going to do? Well, you could get into the live betting of the Denver Nuggets, the Avalanche. I mean, the Colorado's got some exciting teams with some exciting players, and you can check out the live props and all that good stuff available for you on FanDuel. They got those live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. They got those player props that updates as guys heat up. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. And it doesn't have to just be NFL, NBA, NHL, and hey, take a look at some earlier baseball futures. It might be a little early for some of those, but you never know. You can take a look and see if you get some value there. Check it all out. FanDuel.com. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. We are also brought to you by Doer. The holidays are here, and this year I'm not stressing about what to wear because I got it on right now. My wife says, you need more nice collared shirts. Doesn't have to be a big suit. Doesn't have to be a polo. Doesn't have to be. What about a nice, simple flannel? For when, it's the winter time, it's cold. Well, Doer's got me covered because Doer's denim and lifestyle apparel is engineered for movement and versatility. Whether you're on the go or traveling, lounging at home, or going to a nice dinner party, Doer has got you covered. Doer invented the original performance denim, and they give you the best of both worlds, combining classic jeans wear style and flannel style with the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It's time for you to experience the comfort of Doer. I know you'll love these. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. Check out the Doer store. Yes, that Doer store right there in Denver, 2621 Larimer Street. Mention my promo code LOCKEDONDenver in store to get 15% off. Yes, 15% off your first order, or check them out online at shopdoer.com/LockedOnDenver for 15% off. That's shopdoer.com/LockedOnDenver. Locked On Rockies here, back with you all for segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where we're going to dive into a comment from the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section in segment number 3. Before we go any further, though, reminder, folks, you can check out the new Everydayer Club. Get ad-free listening, get access to our members-only Discord, and national shows as well when you join the Everydayer Club. LockedOnRockies.supercast.com. You can also check out LockedOnPodcast.com/Everydayer for more information. Okay, so one of the things that people were talking about this, and one of the things that kind of helped Alon Leishman kind of get some notoriety here with the Marlins, not only through his work, but was the fact that he was calling pitches from the dugout last year. And that even caught the eye of Warren Schaefer here. And here's what, remember, we're going back to this podcast interview. I believe it was from the Shalom Sluggers LLC, but put together by Thomas Harding here, Rockies' new pitching coach, more than ready for challenge of Coors on MLB.com. So here's what this says here. The Marlins visited the Rockies shortly after committing to calling pitches from the dugout, and an intrigued Schaefer stopped on the field before a game to discuss the issue with Leishman, with no idea that they would be working together. We figured that was going to be an advantage for us and thought that teams are going to talk about it, Leishman said. We definitely thought it's in the future with just MLB once we started. I'm sure more teams were going to look into it and ask questions. I love, and let me go into this, but I like this idea of keeping the manager. There's been a lot of talk about managers and what their roles are, and obviously this is pitching coach we're talking here, but keep these guys engaged and active in the game, and not just with the the decisions of subbing people in and out, who's going to hit in this situation, yada yada yada, and when you're going to go to the bullpen. No, keep them engaged with every single pitch. Obviously, the managers are locked in following the pitches and things like that. I get that. But to be calling balls and, to be calling pitches here, to be following each at bat that closely, to be looking at, here's what this guy, here's what the numbers, here's what our data, here's what it says about this guy. Let's attack here. Ooh, he's been, he's not all that sharp. Kyle's not that sharp today with that. Let's hit him with this pitch that he's been locating well. Maybe not the most stuff today, but he's locating this pitch well. Let's hammer that, and let's make sure we can use these things. Reacting in that real time and adjusting in game. That's the type of stuff I love to see. That's the type of stuff that I want to see from the people behind the scenes, the people. I want to see the coaches, the managers, all these people make sure that the Rockies players on the field, whether it be before the game, during the game, or after the game, have the access to the most up-to-date and correct analysis and statistics and resources for them to go up and be able to attack their competition in the most informed way possible. It's a lot to shove in there, and just throwing a bunch of numbers and data at people isn't going to just magically fix the Rockies' problems. But I do hope it's going to make them look like that they don't look less lost out there. Make them look like they're on a similar level to some of these other teams instead of being so constantly outmatched across the board. That's what it felt like so much. Not only were the Rockies just a bad team, obviously, but they felt like they were so outmatched. It felt like every team had an answer for them. And a lot of the times it felt like, well, it's because this team gathers and conveys the information and creates a plan of attack, and their players execute that plan. You can create the plan, but the players got to execute, right? That's also a big part of it. So the Rockies players themselves, just having the magical world of analytics and having more analytical data brought to them is not going to immediately make them all-star caliber players and they're all going to be, it's all fine and dandy. No. It is, however, going to make them modern baseball players. It's going to make them on a similar playing field, at least when it comes to preparation, as these other guys. And that's a good thing, especially when you're talking about the division that you have to compete with. Let's dive back in here. Schaefer and Leishman have said the Rockies will look at calling games for pitchers and catchers, but they aren't guaranteeing that will be the policy. But after being part of the Mariners' rollout, first in the minors, Leishman said he's prepared for questions and even skepticism that follows a policy that's common in amateur ball, but not in the majors. But why? Some of it we will probably keep to ourselves to keep some sort of advantage, Leishman said. At the end of the day, I think the catchers have a lot on their plates. The lesser things you need to focus on, the better you're going to be in what you need to focus on. It's for the benefit of everyone. For now, coaches are not allowed to use the pitch comm device that communicates among the pitcher, catcher, and certain infielders. Leishman said a good system keeps signs from the dugout from being stolen. Here's another interesting little thing there, too. Because, again, like I was saying, I like that it's also not, hey, we know for sure this is going to work, right? It's going to take an adjustment. And this is going to be something that the Rockies, if they implement, is going to take that time to adjust to. And that includes the players, right? But a lot of these guys are young guys, right? A lot of these guys might be coming from situations where it hasn't been too long since they were having pitches called for them from the dugout. It might be an interesting, and this could be a bunch of hooey, right? It could be something that really isn't necessarily something that major league ball players need. But I like the idea of Leishman and Schaefer being in lockstep, talking to each other, discussing how they're going to do it and how they want to attack each batter. I like an active game plan. I like an active dugout, right? I think that's going to be really helpful in making sure that the Rockies are in the right spot here. Here's another one that I thought was going to be really interesting as well, which I wonder if this is, again, is this something that we'll be able to measure or see what type of things does this unlock within the Rockies here? Pitchers throwing live batting practice between starts was common a couple of generations ago, and it's done in amateur ball. With the Marlins, often rehabbing players did the hitting, but sometimes players in the regular lineup stepped in for game speed repetitions. This happened in spring training and during the regular season. So while there is innovation, sometimes Leishman doesn't mind being old-fashioned. How we're looking at things as an organization right now is we're looking to get better, and we know we're going to need to do things differently, says Leishman, who has kept his arm in shape. And with the Marlins, he sometimes faced hitters who are working on swing decisions. It doesn't necessarily mean that things that were done in the past were bad, but also they're not good necessarily. If we look at it in that lens, we're going to be much better. That's the right way to be evaluating here, right? Is there some stuff that we can pull from that's been successful? Is it going to be valuable to talk to Kyle Freeland and work with Kyle Freeland and say, hey, what's been working for you at home? What was working there in some of these strong starts we did see in 2025 and some of these moments in which you really were throwing the ball well? Let's work on that. But let's be innovative. Let's bring in the tech. Let's bring in the analytics. Let's do more of that, certainly. But let's not forget about the core principles, and let's not forget about what it all circles back to. Execution on the field, game time situations, being game ready. And if these live batting situations are the things that help get the Rockies in that mental state, if it helps unlock, uncork that competitiveness there and get them a little bit more locked in and ready to go and tackling every opportunity that they have like it's a game time situation, that might get more out of them. But I think hearing that this mix of let's take the new, let's take some of these concepts of the old, and let's blend together and find the solution, that's encouraging to hear. Because it's, hey, Rockies, we know you got a history of doing things the way you like. We know you got a history of this is how things are done, yada, yada, yada. Why don't we tweak it with this little bit of the, find the blend. And I think that is going to be the secret to success there. But what do you think? Are these encouraging quotes for you to hear? Would you like to see the Rockies calling pitches from the dugout? Let me know in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section with your thoughts, like you can do all the time here after each episode with, like we hear all the time. And we're going to dive into that Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section coming up next on today's episode. Locked On Rockies here, back with you all for segment number 3 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you again so much for making us your first listen of the day and checking us out on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Be part of the show. Fire off your Rockies hot takes. Let me know what's on your mind by heading on over to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel here. Let's dive into a couple of comments here. One's from Jim. I want to say I'm trying to be hopeful about the Rockies. I do think that those fans who want certain people that they would pick up in the front office are expecting too much too soon. We all have to accept that this won't be an overnight or one-season fix. I was like a number of people who are ready to give up on this team. I'm going to give them 2026, and if there is some improvement, give them 27 and see what happens. Go Rockies. He follows it up with, isn't it ironic while we sit here and wait for spring training in the 2026 season to start? In the meantime, we see the Nuggets, Abs, and the Broncos all having great seasons. It's an amazing year for professional sports in Colorado. Absolutely, certainly is. It would be great if all those things were, instead of having 3 championship caliber teams and one of the worst teams ever, it would be nice to at least have a mediocre baseball team alongside championship greatness. But beggars can't be choosers. It is certainly fun right now watching those 3 teams. It is something special. I mean, that's just what I'm hoping for, right? All of those teams have had those moments where they had to look themselves in the mirror and look and do and start doing things differently in order to become these versions of themselves. And certainly in, the case of the Broncos, it helps when Walmart gets involved and Kroenke's involved, right? When you got some very powerful and wealthy people behind the scenes that can help things, certainly does make, addresses some of your problems. But I'm hoping the Rockies are going to be there. But like you mentioned there, Jim, patience. It isn't going to be fixed next year. Plain and simple. The Rockies are probably losing 100 games next year at a minimum. I hope it's not the case. I hope I can go in there and tell you to take the over on wins as I've had for a couple of seasons now. But we have to wait and see. And it stinks to sit there and say that we have to wait and see again, and we have to be patient, and we have to hope that the plans are going to pan out. But there's really nothing else to do. You can't sit here and say that the Rockies are going to be able to find the answers to their decades-long problems in a matter of weeks here, or before spring training, or before the season's even over. Health, who's on the roster, decisions that they make about the roster, who's performing, who's not, who gets called up, who performs well when given an opportunity from the minors, who's actually still contributing in this roster, and who fits in the timeline for this team. There's so many questions and so many things that the Rockies have to address and answer that we're not going to get a clear answer, clear conclusion to this, to the question of, are these changes, are these new moves, are these new hires going to pan out? We won't know until a year and change from now, right? You know, we won't know until the Rockies start the season next year and avoid getting off to the worst start in Major League Baseball history, right? They have to show us a lot for us to believe that things are moving in the right direction, and you're going to have to find those steps in the right direction amidst a lot of doubt and a lot of issues and probably a lot of bad baseball as well. As much as we've sat here and we're hyped up and believing in the new life, the new changes, the new hires and such, great baseball minds with some good resumes, certainly. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to that execution. It's going to come down to them building that plan, building that approach, and then being able to work with and develop the talent into following that plan and executing those plans and leading to success. And the only way to know that, the only way to see the fruits of that labor is to wait and see. And I know that's not an easy one. It's not a fun thing to say, but it is indeed the truth there when it comes to that. Here is another question here from RL. One big question I've always had is, how do the Rockies not have a monopoly on top position player international signings? How have we never landed an Ohtani, Guerrero Jr., Tatis, etc.? Name any big bat that came from the international market. How have we never leveraged hitting at Coors to our advantage with this? We should have international hitters lined up to start their careers with us, but we never do anything internationally for the most part. Name 1 5-WAR international hitter lined up we've signed. How is that possible? I think this is a question and an issue that has to be addressed in this new organization, in this new restructure. I'm with you. When pitching, it's one thing. The Japanese pitchers or the Korean Baseball League pitchers, I understand that they get pumped with the Coors Field conspiracy theories and all the issues and all that stuff. But Coors Field and the Rockies should be an enticing place, not only for international talent, which it's clear the Rockies need to invest and do more of it and be more aggressive and be more active in this, as we see just about it. It's felt like now 3 seasons that there's been an interesting player coming in from overseas, from Japan or Korea. And of course, we know how much the international scouting throughout just the Latin countries there and how much of an influence there. But for those type of players, yeah, this is an area this is a frustrating one. Coors Field should be an enticing place. If you're an international first baseman out there right now, right? The Rockies should be an interesting place for you to go play. But I do wonder, again, the Rockies' reputation being that bad, for there to be such a negative aura and energy around this ball club, that could be seeping into those things. The Rockies are hard. I think they reached out for Sasaki, I think, or who they said, or something last year. I can't remember. It was a pod I feel like I did in the offseason last year. But this is an area that's a weak point for the Rockies. And this is an area they need to improve on. Again, this is something we're talking about. Innovation, when you're talking about doing something differently, this is an area that the Rockies need to improve in. I'm right there with you, RL. I don't quite understand it either, and I don't quite understand what gets in the way, other than money and reputation. I think those are the two things, because just because you're an international player, right, you don't get to just immediately wave the magic wand and say, hey, I'm great over here overseas. I have to be a Dodger. I have to be a Yankee. I have to be a Cub. Now, those teams are going to have the best, financial power to bring you there. But the Rockies should be a club that is better at bringing in these talents and enticing these offensive-minded, the offensive-minded players with their hitter-friendly environment and an open spot, right? I mean, you fill those spots with something like that. Attack first base with an interesting international signing. You never know. Folks, that is going to do it for us here today on Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Go check out the Everydayer Club on LockedOnRockies.supercast.com. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB with our guys Sully And if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.